understood what the cost was. I'm not willing to sacrifice my health. I'm not willing to sacrifice my family. I'm not willing to sacrifice my values or my morals or my integrity. I learned to say no. I learned to walk away. I learned what the price I wasn't willing to pay for the financial benefit was. It's easy to walk away from a shitty job with no pay. It's much tougher to walk away when you're making $40K a month, but I realized that I'm not willing to pay that cost. It's very easy to make money without morals. That's not an accomplishment to me.
Yeah. Welcome back to another episode. This is the first episode back after a little bit of a hiatus, and today we've got JD Daley, who is, I would say, one of the most reasonable voices in this space and just a all-round great human being. So I'll let him introduce himself for those who don't know him, but really glad to have you on, JD. So whatever you
I
want to...
appreciate you having me on.
No, all good, man. Whatever you want to let people know, if you want to just say something good or bad or lie, it's up to you, man.
I'm sure there's lots of directions to go. I got a little bit of both on both sides. So I'm originally from the east coast of Canada, Halifax, Nova Scotia. I got started in sales by accident about 18 years ago, going door to door. I've done then a couple of years of door to door, a couple of years of cold calling, did some account executive, kind of went through the whole corporate structure, got to about a director level, and just hit the burnout. Just didn't want to do it anymore. Ended up walking away, and then looking at more of a remote world. So online business was kind of the rabbit hole, make money online. And I stumbled across remote sales and went through the normal struggles that most people struggle with, and then decided to kind of venture off on my own and develop my own strategies. Had a very successful 4.5 year career as a closer. I was doing about 35 to 45K per month, every single month. And then I felt this kind of, is this all there is moment? And I did an audit of my life and realized a sense of purpose and contribution was missing. I didn't like where the industry was going. I didn't like who was leading the industry. And I decided that I was going to get that sense of purpose by helping other people. So about 4 years ago, I launched Undeniable Closer Mastermind. And it was my way of bringing honest and transparent advice, personalized feedback to each individual, and support in the individual journey rather than the cookie cutter strategies that are out there, the one size fits all role plays and sales training. So I really took the mentorship side seriously. And since then, we've mentored almost 900 students, helping them navigate through not only the remote sales space, but also life, having that person in your corner at every step of the way, making sure you maximize potential.
Awesome. That's a good rundown. It's kind of a interesting how you went from sales and burnt out and then went back into sales anyway, just obviously in a different environment. But when you said you burnt out in the one side, what was the biggest difference between remote selling that didn't lead to that level of burnout, if you don't mind me asking?
I think it has the same potential, but when I was getting into this industry, I realized that it wasn't the sales that was burning me out. It's this constant saying yes and giving up aspects of my life and my values, to someone else and giving them the control. And so I put more restrictions and standards on my life going into remote sales, because when I was running away from corporate, I thought never again. And then I went into kind of the business world online and realized it's not industry specific. Any industry can burn you out when you're stressed and worried and spending all that extra energy on things that you don't care about, and the why is not there. So I think the big difference for me in remote sales was I learned to say no. I learned to walk away. I learned what the price I wasn't willing to pay for the financial benefit was. And what I realized, because that's very tough. It's easy to walk away from a shitty job with no pay. It's much tougher to walk away when you're making 20, 25, 30, 35, 40K a month. But I realized that I'm not willing to pay that cost. So if I have a standard, which is very different, because I think a lot of people do that and then they put the expectation on the company. I have no expectations. I believe that each company should run. That's the one beautiful thing about the freedom of business, is you get to run it the way you want. I get to choose if whether that's in alignment with me or not. I have a standard. I don't expect any business to meet that standard. I make decisions based on whether they meet it or not. And if they don't meet it, and we communicate and it's their standards are different or their values are different or how they want to run the business is different, then I'm okay with walking away.
Mm.
That
It's
was the difference
interesting.
maker for me.
Yeah, that's I think looking at what you didn't want to accept is probably a shift that a lot of people don't typically make. It's normally
Mm,
all about the goal, right? What you want to get or get more of, or very few people say what could I do with less within my life, you know? So I
right.
think that's an interesting take. Um, One thing that I notice, obviously, I've been around your stuff for a while, so I've seen, your comments, your things, and different stuff like that. It feels like you've got a strong philosophy, I'd say, of
Mm,
life or of things.
yeah.
How much of that plays into, obviously, a little bit around what you won't accept and like your values, but then also, for people who are getting into sales or in sales, how much of your philosophy do you take into that role as well? Because obviously you've got the outside of the role and the inside, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, all of it. I take all of it. I've never believed in work-life balance
Mm,
because especially if you're trading a third of your life in that work realm and you're trying to balance the two, well, I want work to be part of my life, not something I have to balance with my life. I want to enjoy what I do. I want a sense of purpose. I want to be impactful. And I mean, that doesn't mean that I want to avoid hard work or that I don't want to be a team player. There's certain sacrifices I'm willing to make and certain sacrifices I'm not, just like the business owner. If
mm,
the business owner feels like I am detrimental to the team or there's a better opportunity, I want them to make those decisions.
mm,
I respect those decisions. If I am no longer valuable to the company, I don't expect them to keep me along. And the
yeah,
same thing, it's a relationship. And so I bring those philosophies in and I bring that standard and those values. But one thing that really helped me is I made a decision what success is worth and what it's not. And I
mm,
made that once. And in this industry, I see people trying to make that decision on a weekly or monthly basis. And it's usually when things aren't going well. I
mm,
preemptively made that decision and I had a vision for my success. And then I understood what the cost was. I'm not willing to sacrifice my health. I'm not willing to sacrifice my family. I'm not willing to sacrifice my values or my morals or my integrity.
mm,
Everything else seemed to be up for grabs. So
mm,
then when I dealt with situations, I was like, well, it doesn't go against any of these things. Okay, I'm willing to pay that price. If it started to lean in towards those things, I'm not willing to give up my life. I'm not willing to give up all of this list. If it started to infringe on that, then I would have a conversation. I would seek to understand, and then I would seek to be understood. And if we can't come to terms, I wish them well. I hope that they found value in their experience with me, but I'm going to design my life around what I want, just like the business owner is doing the same thing. And so,
yeah,
what I found was oftentimes a lot of these conflicts came from a lack of communication. And any time that I felt frustration when I did the audit, I realized, oh, every one of my frustrations comes from expectations and
mm,
typically unspoken expectation, and that fuels, and then I don't speak it, and then it escalates, and then it escalates, and then it's anger, and then it's resentment. So I
mm,
would rather bring to the surface. So I realized, okay, well, one, I want to be clear onboarding. What are we exchanging here? What are your expectations of me? What are my standards? Okay, great. And then anytime that it went outside of that, it was a simple conversation. And either they have shifted what we originally agreed on and we find a solution, or we don't. And there's no bad blood. It's just the business, and I operate my career like a business. The two businesses are no longer strategically aligned and we go our separate ways.
mm. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
37.
37. How, because obviously you've been doing this a while. How did
Right.
you, or did you ever get a point I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how did you get such a strong philosophy that you could stand behind at a reasonably young age, right? Because I mean, obviously you're talking now, but you've obviously had this for a few years. Like, how did you develop that? If you don't mind me asking, and that's a bit left out the
Not
left corner,
not at
but
all. I think probably from making a lot of mistakes. I always think that like wisdom comes from experiences, experience comes from fucking up. And so
yeah,
the thing that really helped me was I was never afraid of failure. That wasn't a big thing. I see it often, but failure was not something that scared me. Mediocrity was something that scared me, like right in the middle. Like I'm not failing, but I'm not succeeding. I'm comfortable. I have what everybody else had. And like I always had that burden of potential that I have a unique set of gifts and I should leverage that. And that is, life is the canvas at which I'm painting on. Right? And so I experienced a lot throughout my life. I made a lot of mistakes, but I made them very quickly. And my goal was not to avoid the mistakes, but make them quickly and not make the same ones. And so, what I've found is a lot of people are trying to go through life in this industry by not making mistakes. And I think that's the greatest mistake you can make. And so, I'm very reflective. I am brutally honest with myself from a place of the brutal is in the honesty, not the judgment. I'm able to look at my errors. I'm able to look at my flaws, and I am deeply flawed. And, but I also have opportunity. And so I think it's a path of self acceptance that I am not a great marketer. I'm not organized and structured as much as other people are. I don't like being the CEO. I'm not good at delegating. I understand those things, but I also understand that I have gifts to give. And so I'm not looking at other people who are more organized than me and being like, oh, I wish I had that. I double down on my strengths. I'm honest in my mistakes. I try and redeem myself. I try and make amends. But I carry the lessons with me, not the mistakes, because I see a lot of people that have the weight of their past. I find that it's very heavy. And especially if you're climbing, right? Your vision is higher up. You're climbing with this 50-pound bag of mistakes. And what I've realized is if you can take those mistakes and extract the data, extract what you need from it, it becomes a Swiss Army knife. It's much more functional, it's much lighter to carry with you, and it's useful along the way.
yeah, I like that. It's interesting. I like that. I made a note of brutal honesty, not judgment, because I think
Mm,
that's a distinction I've not ever heard spoken that way, but also one that I think a lot of people probably haven't considered either. Because I think when you think of brutal honesty, it's like, tell me what I did wrong, and that's all I'm thinking is like what you did wrong, and then what does wrong mean to me, right? It means bad. It means so that's really I like that. Yeah,
yeah.
brutal
Something
honesty,
that can
not
help
judgment.
people as well is it's we grow up in this right or wrong, pass or fail. And I think one thing that really helped me is optimal or suboptimal. It takes the sting out of it.
Yeah.
Was that an optimal decision? No. Okay, so it was suboptimal. It can be suboptimal, meaning the second best decision, or it can be the worst decision you've ever made. All of those fall in that category. And
Mm.
so it's not right or wrong. There's optimal, the best decision you could have made. And then there's some degree of others. Right. And so I think everybody needs to have a journey of dividing your self worth from your experiences. You are not the individual mistakes. You are not the person you were a year ago. And we don't have a great updating system. We don't have a great operating system that can update and say, I've made all these changes, right, but I still feel like a sum of my full experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that's difficult for a lot of people to do, as
Absolutely.
not least because of the other things you've already talked about. You know, trying to get success at the cost of other things. So it's like they're not looking at that because they can't even keep their head above water because of what they're focusing on in other situations. So it's kind of like it follows through. Um,
Mhm.
one question I'm hesitant to ask, but I really want to know the answer to
All right. Let's
is
have it.
like I mentioned before, you're one of the most reasonable voices in this space, and I mean that with the utmost respect. Like if I ever see you co-star, it's really funny. If I'm scrolling and there's someone who's like complaining about an issue in sales, like I'm about to scroll past, but if I see your name commented, I'll always stop and have a look at what you wrote because I
Thank
always
you. I appreciate
find it is very valid actionable advice, not, just put out there for ego's sake or to sell something. I suppose it's like a two-part question. Do you feel is the first one, and the second one is how do you, if you do, feel being reasonable and actually honest and actually realistic with people has affected the business side of the mentorship, right? Because you focus a lot more on the mentorship, and I've only ever heard good things. I've obviously been around you as well, and like I've never heard anyone badmouth you. A lot of
Hmm.
other places, it's hit or miss, right? Let's be
Right.
nice to them. It's hit or miss.
Right.
But there's also people who have blown up in that world,
Right.
rightly or wrongly, doesn't matter. So, do you feel being that reasonable, level-headed has impacted the business side, and how do you feel it has, if it has?
Sure. Of course. Absolutely. I mean, it's very easy to make money without morals. Right? Like,
That's going to be my headline for
yeah.
the
I mean,
podcast.
that's not an accomplishment to me,
Yeah.
right? So, that's it's looking at it, and of course, like those are restrictions. If you could just lie to everybody, then you would make more money, and especially people that want to be lied to. If you can oversell, I mean, in our industry, when I first came in, it was, there was literally marketing that said people are lining up down the block to stuff your pockets full of cash. I remember it word for word, right? All you need is Wi-Fi connection, one special skill, and it's basically 10K guaranteed, right? So I think you have to understand it's easy for me to make those judgments as well, right?
Mm,
And that doesn't do anything, right? I want to educate, I want to be transparent. I believe that if the truth scares you away from this industry, it's better to learn it and be scared away quicker. That's
mhm,
it. It's not for everybody. It's not supposed to be for everybody. It is difficult. We're not supposed to sell the ease and convenience. It's not easy. It's not convenient, or else it wouldn't be quality. I mean, you're talking about an industry where people come in and have the potential to make multi six figures a year. Why would that be easy? With no education, with no background,
mhm,
fairly smooth transition. So I think it's easy for me to judge. And at some points, there is some frustration because people are buying into the idea. But
mhm,
you have to understand that my intention when I came into this industry was not financial. I was
mhm,
great financially after 5 years of remote sales and a successful career there. So that wasn't my priority. I had a different view of success. The thing that got me into mentorship was a lack of purpose and
mhm.
contribution. So as a
Interesting.
business model, UCM is probably the worst business model in the space. It's I spend so much time with each individual. I get to know them on an individual basis, their strengths, their weaknesses, their fears, their insecurities, the thing they don't know about themselves, when to give them a kick in the ass, when to give them a pep talk. I am there when there's depression hits, when there's, divorce or relationships, when there's a death in the family, personal, professional. Like that's not scalable. It's not supposed to be scalable. I believe in mentorship. And when I started, I seen the word mentor being used in marketing, and it wasn't anything close. And I think mentorship is sacred, and it's been sacred for a long time, and we've totally lost it. And
Mm,
now we use it as a marketing term, but a course is not a mentorship. And so if I wanted to package up a course and here's how you handle objections and here's some role plays, of course it would be more profitable. But profitability is only one aspect of my vision of success.
mm,
And so to me, like the meaning and the impact behind it is what I'm seeking for. Now you still have to run as a business, but I can always run another business. I can
mm,
have other ventures, I can have investments. There's a lot of things where I think there's a lie being told, or maybe an experience that someone's had that they want to translate, that your profit and your passion and your purpose all have to be singular. And
right.
I just don't think that's true. I think that's where a lot of people fall in a trap, and that maybe you love to play guitar. You don't need to make money from playing
Mm,
guitar. And sometimes that makes it not as fun. You've seen
mm,
some amazing artists that have this deep passion for music and they fall off as soon as it has to be profitable.
yeah.
So why can't we say, okay, well, I do need profit, I do need passion, I do need purpose. Those can come from three things. Maybe my purpose is to be a great father. and my profit comes from an e-commerce, and my passion is comic books, right? Whatever it is, like, as long as you check those boxes, who the fuck cares where it comes from, right? It's like, oh, Dave's purpose is totally separated from his profit. Who who cares, right? So what I've realized is if I'm competing on a profit model, then
Mm,
UCM is a failure. If I'm competing on compassion and impact in the
mm,
individual lives and impact on the industry, when I first came into this industry, no one was talking about networking as a job search strategy. No one was talking
yeah.
about personal branding. No one was talking about natural selling. No one was talking about all the scams and BS of guaranteed placements and all these different things. And we brought those to the surface. And I believe that the people in our community are much more educated on what
Mm,
this industry is, and they have much more support and intel. And other people have taken segments of UCM and built
mm,
amazing businesses off that as well. And that's helped more people. So for me, it's just about expanding, making $1 million a month with no integrity is not a level of success. If that's what success is, then I want to be a failure.
yeah, interesting. So I think that comes back a little bit to understanding what success actually is. And I do think you kind of touched on it earlier. I think especially in our industry, but in a lot of industries, success is definitely the term success is handed to people. I feel like this is
Mhm.
what success is as a
Right.
remote closer, right? It's
Right.
and I think, a big part what you said about modeling people. I think
Mm.
for me, I've long thought like, if people are like I really respect like Elon Musk from like a lot of different points, but it's like, but do I want to have his life? Like,
Right.
hell no, right? Like,
Right.
so why would modeling like him as a whole be the right move for my version of success, right? Because it's
Right.
it's not what I'm looking for. Or if someone's like valuing family a lot more, then really
Right.
don't value certain people, right? And it'll model certain people. So I guess for you, where did your understanding of what your success was come from, and does it change? Like, is it
Yes.
because it's based on values? Does it stay the same, but the output looks different? Or
No, it should change. We have projected an idea of success, but if you look at the term itself, it's the ability to bridge the gap between where you are in your pursuit, your aim.
Mm,
So you set out, you aim for something, and I think, you know, humans should always be in pursuit of something. That doesn't mean that you don't accept where you are. It doesn't mean that you don't enjoy where you are, but you should always be, whether it's to become a better father or a better son or daughter, or, learning something, a skill. So it's your ability to bridge that gap. So I think those
mm,
aims, right? Like if I walked away from after 4.5 years successful in remote sales, the moment I walk away, was that a failure? Of course not. It's a different pursuit. I
mm,
change, I'm evolving, I'm meeting certain needs. I had that sense of accomplishment and certainty that comes with the financial success, but something was missing. And so it was time for a new pursuit. And, eventually I'm going to have a family, and my pursuits and my aim is going to change. And so instead of helping thousands of people online, right, a good percentage of that time is going to be dedicated to helping a few people and
mm,
being a father, right? And then, I want to write books, and I want to do more public speaking, and I want to kind of split what I'm doing now into intimate
mm,
relationships and a broader reach, because I think a lot of people are influenced easily, and when you come into this industry, someone else sets the goal and the target for you. But what they don't realize behind the scenes is they're setting that goal because that is a justifiable target to be able to justify spending the money.
mhm,
So it's manufactured targets to be able to say, well, yeah, if I can make 10K a month, then maybe it is worth spending 10K on this program. But
mhm,
they don't have your consideration. And so one of the first things that I do in UCM is break down of like, you're not here for the 10K goal. What is it a symbol of? What would you do with that 10K? You're not a paper collector. It's not like you're gonna, Scrooge McDuck and just put it on the mattress and float around in it. What does it mean to you? Is it retiring your family? Is it, you know, the vacations, the freedom? What does that mean? And for a lot of students that come in, I realized that, hey, you would actually be happier. And they realize it too, that, hey, you'd probably be happier if you dedicated more time to something else and came in and made 5 to 7K, and that was your life, and you had more time to spend with your kids. The problem is the people that have been most successful and are the loudest in this space have always been the grinders, have always been the bro sales that come in, and your life is dedicated and you don't have a social life and you don't have this, and all you do is eat, sleep, and breathe objection handling and discovery. That's not my definition of success. That's not a lot of people's definition of success, but they are the loudest, and it's attractive when you see their life, when you see their confidence. You're like, yeah. So they're telling people like this is a full-time industry and you're on the grind. And I've seen many people that use this as a stepping stone. I think that's the other thing people have to consider is we've had a lot of UCM students that use their journey here to fundraise the next project. And I think that's a great opportunity as well. So it's life by design, but your design. And so being able to check in and also allowing yourself to discover that this may be a stepping stone, and that your vision and your values and your goal and your destination may change along the way. And that's great. That's what growth and evolving is.
I think that's not spoken about widely enough. In anything, like not just in our industry, I mean just in
Right.
general. I think that's definitely a topic that you could like spend hours on. But
Oh,
I
for
like
sure.
I like the reframe of what success actually means from like a
Right.
etymology point of view, like the
Right.
pursuit side and things, because I think it's been given to us as a thing, hasn't it? Like,
Right.
are you
Like a
successful? Have you
destination.
achieved success? Have you done it? And it's like, but it is like that's the wrong tense or whatever to use the word, isn't it? It's actually not, because it was like, have you pursued? Like, hang on, that doesn't make
Right.
sense, right? Like,
Right.
have you fully pursued? You're like, well, can you?
Yeah.
Like, is that a thing?
Right.
So I think that's
It's a
interesting.
moving target.
Yeah, it's. But I think that this is why I asked about your philosophy earlier, because I think all of this links back because of your worldview, you can step back and see that, and you can acknowledge that success means this. So you're holding that tension as strongly as someone like who is being given success means this to you in this industry.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think that's something again that people need.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't sound sexy, does it? It doesn't, like when they're like, I can either, and I actually said this to someone on a sales call, because I was like, I'm asking about your business because what we actually do is going to increase your quality of life, and that's actually
Right.
way better. But you're not going to
Right.
buy unless you can see money in this, right?
Right.
And it's
Right.
like it's so annoying because we know that that means more. Like if someone's
Right.
not stressed, they're not worried, they've got their passion, like you said, it's better. But because someone else is making 30K a month, they're just like, I'm a failure. I haven't done this.
Right.
What would be the biggest thing you would give advice for someone who's starting in this industry? And I'm leading on with that because I don't know if it's going to be related to that, but for someone who, it's not whether they're deciding to get in, they've already kind of jumped in, they've maybe even joined a mentorship, or they're kind of, but it's still early doors.
Mm-hmm.
What's the sort of advice you'd give them to help them, maneuver this sort of whole thing we're talking about, do you think?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. There's more the intrinsic side, which is the natural desire. Like desire always makes a gap, right?
Right.
It's like where you are, and don't let that get in the way of the acceptance of where you are, right?
Mm,
Because oftentimes that burden of potential can weigh you down. So
mm,
the intrinsic advice would be, even though you want to move forward quickly, a lot of the answers are in the past. So a lot of the things that developed my philosophy was through reflection,
mm,
understanding that, hey, it is strange that we're told to pick a career, even though we don't know anything about any of the careers when we're 16 years old. That's strange.
yeah.
Okay, so maybe I've developed a lot since I was 16, and maybe like my goal to be a football player is probably not in alignment because I made it as a kid. Right.
Mhm,
So allow yourself the ability to change and discover things about yourself as you go. As far as success and more the step by step, the biggest shift for me, there was a couple, but the biggest thing for me was deciding to operate like a business.
Mm.
I realized that the job applicants in this space and the employee kind of setup doesn't really reward us. And I did a little research and found out that basically this whole setup was there was a lot of undesirable jobs. And so they realized that if we sell them the dream, right, you start at the bottom and you work your way up, the mailroom to CEO fallacy. That was created to get people into undesirable jobs. And then, yeah, if you continue on, you'll get promoted and raised. And so what happens is when you originally start, they tell you you work hard and you'll make a lot of money. Well, some of the brokest people I know are the hardest working. So
Mm.
that's not it. And then they tell you, well, if you work hard with a skill, like if you work hard on developing your skill, then you'll make a lot of money. That's not necessarily true as well. You will see an impact. It's better than working hard. Working skilled hard is good. But there's a game that's played here. And what I've realized is the business owners are always on the other side. They're always on the winning side. The
Mhm.
business owners typically do better than the employees. That's just how it goes, right? So I realized that, and I realized that I wasn't being respected as a job applicant, and I didn't like having that employee mindset. And then I started exploring the freelance market and all of these service providers, and I realized that Facebook ad specialists, email marketers, copywriters, all of these professions, they show up as valued service providers. They have, a strategic alliance. They sign clients. They negotiate their terms. They're willing to walk away from a client. The client doesn't tell them what to do after hours. They don't demand things. It's like, that's a much better environment. Sales is my service. Why can't I do something like that? And it took letting go and realizing that, hey, this system was not built for me to succeed. There's now, and it was harder to see then. There was only 2 or 3 people standing between me and the business owners. Now there's like 1,000 people that have positioned themselves, and their profit is based on you believing in playing ball. I
Mhm.
wasn't willing to play ball. I realized that, hey, what are these recruiters doing that I couldn't? They're introducing me to a business owner. I can introduce myself. They're building systems. I can learn how to do that. I can learn how to consult. There's certain things that I can learn that they do. That's great. I'm not saying that there's a bad service. They're a valued service provider. I can be a valued service provider. And so instead of competing with other job applicants, I started competing at that service provider
Mm.
level, and I started to get a lot better results very quickly. Business owners were respecting me. I came in, I operated as a business within their business. And the other thing that I didn't realize at the time is most times it's a linear process, meaning you apply, you get interviews, you get jobs, and then all that stuff goes out of the window. And then you're sink or swim. If 3 months it doesn't work, it's back to the drawing board. What I
Mm.
realize is there's a lot of ways where you can develop that compounding interest. So by the time either you outgrow the company or they outgrow you, you're already in a better spot. And that's career advancement. What most people are happening to do is they leave their job, whether they quit or get fired, and they're forced to take a lateral position to find a job that's similar to the job they just left. What I wanted to do is say, I'm going to work my ass off in the time that I'm with this company. But when that time is done, my next position will be significantly better. And I don't
Mhm.
just mean more money, it could mean the same amount of money in less time or a different opportunity, but it's going to be better. I am going to advance. I'm not going to stay stagnant, and I'm not going to wait for someone else to decide my fate. And so that was the marketing and CEO aspect of my business, which I ran like my career like a business. So I was progressing instead of just investing all of my working time in your dream as a business
Mhm.
owner. I would work hours and I would invest in your dream and our exchange. And then after hours, I would invest in my dream and my business. And I would make sure that my business is constantly progressing.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. It's interesting, and obviously that's a whole. Because I've obviously, familiar with your term sales as a service and things like that, and obviously that's like a big learning curve for a lot of people that no one else out there that I know of is teaching that in terms
No,
of sales mentorship, right?
it's not benefit for them, right? It actually, back to the profit model, like
Yeah.
every individual operating like a business owner eliminates probably about 85 to 90% of the offers between us and the business owner. So it would be horrible for the market as far as the middle people that have profited for so long, connecting us with business owners and pretending like both sides need them. Because when we're accountable and when we took ownership, the CEO, the business owner, they have to be accountable for everything. Right. An employee doesn't. They can blame the leads. They can blame this. When you're accountable, right? Like, oh, I have to get my own job. I have to connect my own. I have to do this. I have to do that. That eliminates a lot of the dependency, and 85% of the market would be wiped out. So they do not want sales as a service to be out there. That's not beneficial or profitable to them.
It's interesting, isn't it? That, but I think it's more necessary now. There's even more people in it. It's like one of those things that it's compounding in its own necessity, right?
100%. When I first started, the things that I was teaching were a huge competitive advantage. Now it's a disadvantage if you don't. It's no longer the same competitive edge, right? Like you could just do it. Like we'd have students like 4 days in be like, holy shit, like I've already got 6 interviews. Now it's a matter of, and that's early adoption for anything, right? The early adopters get the biggest benefit. That was like the first YouTube creators. It wasn't that their content was so incredible. It was they were the early adopters. And then there's the advantage. And then eventually it becomes a disadvantage. And now we're at that point where if you're not doing it, then it's a clear disadvantage. And now it's how do I evolve and stand out? The beautiful thing is there's still so many people that are just coming in and waiting for things to happen. So it's still very easy to stand out. But if you're not doing those baseline things, if you're not developing your visibility and your value in the space, if you're not forming relationships, if you're not developing your skill, then you are falling behind. It's no longer the same competitive edge.
So, yeah, again, interesting to hear that go from the advantage to it's a disadvantage not to. That's a really interesting distinction. But,
just like investing, right? Like if you started, because we think we have to have a certain amount of money to invest. But the person who starts with $20 at 20 years of age is in a much better position. And then the person who starts at 30, but then there is that critical point where if you don't start by this time, it's no longer just an advantage. You're falling on the other side. And so we understand it with credit in that if I take debt, then I'm paying interest. If I make investments, right, then I'm getting the interest. So investing in those areas that have compounding interest, like branding, like networking, those are areas that the longer you do it, the more benefits you get.
Yeah, 100%. That's fascinating. Obviously, I will put a link in the thing to the undeniable community. But did you want to speak to that at all? Do you want to let people know a little bit more? Because we've alluded to it, but we haven't touched too much on what you actually do.
Sure. And it's challenging. And this is, if you ever heard any of my sales calls, it gets very difficult because people are asking me, what is UCM? Well, it's kind of flipped back in that what do you need? Yeah. And that's very difficult for people. People want to know like, well, what's week 2 module and what's this and what training should I go through? And it's like, you're hiring me to make sure that you and I are maximizing progress. That's UCM. You're getting the true mentorship. I am personalizing everything around you. So there is no PDF that says Dave needs this and because you went through this when you were younger, that's going to affect you here and you have these insecurities and this is what you need to do as skill-wise. We figure that out together, but you're never alone in that. And I'm going to give you that 18 years of insights and support. And if I can't do it, I'll find someone who can help you with something individually. As far as the remote sales community, it's kind of what we talked about. So this is a free community where you can get honest and transparent advice. This is not the funnel where everything is trying to sell you something. There's a lot of people that I don't want to work with, honestly. So don't feel, if you're coming to the community, I might not want, there's a good chance that I do not want you in the mentorship, and that's okay. That's nothing bad about you. It's right now, the integrity of the organization is much stronger than my need for each individual to sign up. So this is a great place where you don't have to worry about paywalls, where you can start to learn the principles and ideas. There's tons of guides, there's tons of support. You can have conversations, you can network. If you're good at searching Facebook groups, you can find everything that you need to be successful. And that's the difference, is when you pay for something, you're getting that personalized support. And what we're doing is sharing responsibility. If you join the community, you're going to get all of that reference. You're going to get a lot of the strategies, everything that you need, but you're going to have to curate it and cultivate it yourself and organize it and figure out how it personalizes to you. But you're more than welcome in the community. We'd love to have you. It's, I think, probably the most supportive, definitely the most supportive community, and I think the most insightful, and it's a place to also share ideas. I don't feel like all my ideas are the ideas. I'm sharing my experience, but I'm also open to other people's version of success, and we can kind of collaborate there.
Yeah, yeah, I can attest to that too. Obviously, being part of it for so long, that it isn't a funnel, and I respect that a lot in this space because it's so easy to just make it one. You know, it's like you wouldn't even have to think, and you could make it one. And I think, yeah, it's definitely the most interactive, the most supportive, and everyone in there has the common goal of wanting to better their life rather than get better at the one thing that person happens to sell, which is also, you know, so yeah, I think that's a great breakdown from yourself, but just from personal experience, for if anyone cares about that, if that weighs on their decision to join or not, hopefully it helps.
Yeah, of course. And the biggest thing is, like, I don't have a DM setter. If you reach out to me and you get a response, it's me. I don't have a copywriter. So if you get an email from me or if you see a post from me, you'll know from the spelling errors and all the grammar issues. That's my part of my personal brand, right? Of course. As if it was spelled perfectly, that's when you know I might have hired a copywriter. But you're getting my content, you're getting my ideas, you're getting my messages. So get involved and have the conversations, you know. That's it.
That's awesome. Well, I genuinely wish we had more time. This is on me. I have to call it, unfortunately.
That's
Maybe
all
we'll get
good.
you on
Yeah.
and again. But
Round two,
I re
anytime.
yeah, and I really appreciate you coming on. I respect you a lot, and I really appreciate you jumping on my little podcast here. So, yeah, and again, I will put a link to your free group in the details section. So if anyone wants to go there, if anyone wants to ask any questions, obviously they can find you through there on Facebook. And if anyone wants to ask any questions to me, I'll point you in the right direction as well.
Yeah,
But
and
JD,
I'll check out the comment section once the video is posted, and if anybody has any questions there, I'll go through and answer them as well.
appreciate it. Well, I appreciate it a lot, man. Really do.
Awesome.
And
Thanks,
we'll do
Dave.
this again.